Hello, y'all, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Reaction Show. My name is Andrew Velez, and I'm here with my co-host, Joel Dehls. Now, we're here after watching that Thursday night football game. Obviously, by the name of the title, you know that we're not going to talk too nicely about one of these two teams, but it was the Giants versus the 49ers. Final score of 32-12. Not much offense on the Giants side. Some really solid offensive performance from the Niners, but Joel Dehls, how are you doing tonight?
Doing fantastic. I got a mic now, so I should
Right.
sound like I'm not talking underwater. After I listened to the clip we had of Justin Fields, I was like, yeah, it's time. So in the studio, thankfully, we had some extra mics laying around. This was a tough game, and Daniel Jones is going to be under the microscope for a lot of it, but a lot of it wasn't his fault. This offensive line is depleted. Darren Waller had a bad game, and the weapons outside of Darren Waller are not good. This was one of my biggest issues for this Giants team was I was high on Darren Waller, but the rest of the guys really don't scare me. I was shocked that Jalen Hyatt barely saw the field. I think in the third quarter, he had 9 total snaps. I'm not sure if he got on the field much more after that. I understand that you're playing more of a quick passing game against the Niners and their pass rush, but Jalen Hyatt's your most explosive weapon. Dable has got to find a way to get him out there, whether that's slant, screens, find a way to get your most explosive player the ball. So from the Giants side of things, it was an ugly, ugly game, but you can't blame Daniel Jones. San Francisco side, it's more of the same. You know, Brock Purdy, 300 plus yards, 2 touchdowns. It still, I feel like, wasn't his cleanest game. I feel like week 1 was still probably his best game, even though statistically this was his best. Debo Samuel was fantastic. Kittle was fantastic. CMC is CMC. So from their side of things, status quo. But from the Giants, the combination of bad matchup, injuries, bad game from Waller just turned into a really ugly game offensively.
I'll talk about the Niners before I go in depth with the Giants because obviously I'm not pleased from what I'm seeing. But to talk about the Niners, I think outside of that first drive where we saw Brock Purdy kind of throw almost 2 interceptions, kind of got bailed out. Also on that tip pass that ended up being a catch to Juwan Jennings that ended up being a decent gain. But outside of that, I thought that he played a pretty clean game down the stretch, made some very, very Brock Purdy-esque throws. One of the more impressive throws actually was one that was dropped by CMC, who usually is one of the most for sure hands out of the running backs, but goes and throws it back shoulder. CMC catches it, but wasn't able to finish the catch. CMC owed him a touchdown. Let's be honest. But all jokes aside, Debo Samuel ends up catching a nice back shoulder catch from Brock Purdy. The two seem to be having a very good connection, and Debo Samuel, for someone who last season people counted him out because he was injured. They kind of were just like, one season, maybe that's all he was really all to be cracked out for. But what a game he had. He goes for 6 receptions, 129 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, Debo Samuel, when he's 100%, is one of the better wide receivers in the National Football League. Want to give some love to George Kittle as well. He goes for 7 catches, 90 yards. The two of them were just dragging DBs all night long. The yards after catch from those two gentlemen were insane. The DBs were in hell. They couldn't make a tackle. That was really one of the biggest faults, and really one of the few faults I say with the Giants defense. And really what it comes down to is that this Giants offense can't do a damn thing. This offensive line without Andrew Thomas is G League. It's really unfortunate and sad that Daniel Jones was put in one of the worst positions a quarterback has ever been put into. The only one worse that I can think about was maybe Sam Darnold. And also I say that because Sam Darnold was pushed out of the building and traded, which, hey, Joe Douglas Masterclass was able to get some decent draft capital for him. But Daniel Jones was drafted into a situation where, yeah, Saquon Barkley's there, but no true weapon, no true outside threat, and not a really great tight end up until this point in the season. Ellinger's not bad. And, of course, I'm talking about Darren Waller up until this point in the season, but I'm going to talk about him in a few. But this offensive line's horrific. It's not good, and it hasn't been good not one season in Daniel Jones' tenure with the New York Giants. Maybe outside of maybe his rookie season where he actually had time to chill in the pocket and do something. But he has no time to do anything. He was only sacked twice, but that doesn't do justice to the injustice that he faced today. The pressure was constant. He could not sit in the pocket. He has to escape. He has to do anything he can for this offense to be somewhat decent. And even still, 22 of 32, 137 yards, and an interception. He has 4 interceptions this season, and 3 of them were tipped and not his fault. 2 dropped by Saquon and 1 dropped by Darren Waller. And Darren Waller, What a disappointment he has been in 2 of the 3 weeks so far. Had a decent game against the Cardinals, was definitely integral in the comeback, but week 1, really nobody was on board when it came to the Dallas Cowboys. And then this week, say what you want, maybe that pass was a little bit high, but Darren Waller is 6'6", a huge target. It hits you in the hands. You have to catch that ball. And then the one that turns into an interception, you have to catch that ball. There's no excuse. Darren Waller is supposed to be the big threat, the main target for Daniel Jones, and up until this point, it has not been the case. This offense has been sad. It has been inconsistent. Outside of one half of football, this offense has not looked good. We saw some spurts here and there, solid opening drive and a solid drive towards the end of the first half to get points on the board. Then they go and they got really decent field possession off the punt from the Niners, and Matt Breida was able to punch it in for a touchdown. Other than that, this offense was terrible all game long. So I'm really hopeful that the Giants take a step back and realize what we're doing to Daniel Jones is wrong. Can DJ play better from time to time? Sure, but he's so far from number 1 on that list of problems with the New York Giants. It's not even funny. I want to give a credit to the Giants defense because they held their own against one of the better offenses in the league. And I get it. You said it. Statistically, Brock Purdy had one of his better games, 25 of 37, 310 yards and 2 touchdowns. But they were able to get stops. They were able to hold the Niners when they were in the red zone to just 3 points a couple of times. When you needed them to get a stop, they had a couple 3 and outs. The offense simply could not do anything. And really, this Giants team, I get it. It was a bad matchup coming in. No Andrew Thomas, no Saquon Barkley. It was really written on the wall before this game even started. But this offense is really so sad, and it really disheartens me that a lot of people's takeaway is just going to be looking at the box score and thinking that Daniel Jones did not a damn thing. Turn the tape on and understand that Daniel Jones is running for his damn life, and he has no help out on that football field.
Daniel Jones isn't the problem. And to be fair to the Giants, 2 of the 3 weeks they played the best defenses in football. Dallas week 1, San Fran week 3. The bad news I have for Giants fan is it doesn't get much easier. You got Seattle, Miami, Buffalo, Washington, and the Jets your next 5 weeks. You got some great offenses. You got some great defenses there. While Daniel Jones isn't the problem, there also doesn't seem to be a solution on this team. You're not going to be able, in my opinion, to just throw together an offensive line this season that's going to be playing at an above average level. This,
Agreed.
of course, Andrew Thomas is going to come back at some point, and we know he's elite, but I'm looking at the 4 other guys on that offensive line, and I'm saying, which one of these guys is going to get better? We're hoping Evan Neal can do it. You're hoping JMS, the rookie center you took, is going to get better as time goes on. But through these first 3 weeks, it's been a really ugly offensive line. And this was part of the problem coming into the season was they kind of put all of their eggs into the Darren Waller basket. We like Darren Waller, right? A couple of years ago, one of the best tight ends in the NFL. But it's also been a few years since we've seen Darren Waller play at that elite level. So when you're putting all of your faith into this guy to more or less carry your offense outside of Saquon Barkley, I can't be shocked if it doesn't go right. Like, I do think Darren Waller has all the talent to be an elite weapon in the NFL, but there's going to be games where he's inconsistent. He's not going to be Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce level of player. So if you're getting a tier 2, maybe tier 3 tight end, because I think right now Hawkinson is clearly better than him. If that's your best offensively, you're probably not going to have a great offense. And if Saquon was playing, of course the offense is going to look better than it does, but Saquon does not change the outcome of this game. Saquon does not make this 30-12 to all of a sudden you win 27 or 30 to 27, whatever the score ends up being. Saquon obviously helps the offense, helps Daniel Jones. He's more explosive when you need a check down. But more than anything, they were outmatched. This is a defensive line that's arguably the best in the NFL, going up against a bottom 5 offensive line. You saw it coming into the game. It played out really how we were expecting. And we mentioned on the podcast last episode 2 days ago that the Giants did feel like they were a year ahead of schedule last season, where they got a pretty favorable schedule. They won a lot of close games. Of course, the win in Minnesota, you take a playoff win. I'm not saying Giants fans should be upset over a playoff win, but when you do end up being a year early, you end up getting a harder schedule. Your draft pick isn't as good. And now you kind of see, the side effects to that, where you're not able to really improve on the team you had last year. More or less, it is the same team. And you were just hoping with, okay, Daniel Jones in year 2, hopefully Evan Neal progresses, hopefully Darren Waller changes things. But by not resetting this team, you're kind of seeing that it definitely does have a ceiling.
And no Jalen Hyatt activity. When we say that the Giants don't have any explosive weapons, but Jalen Hyatt is on the roster and getting zero burn, it makes my blood boil. It's for as great as Dable is, absolutely.
Oh no, Drew's got some McDonald's Wi-Fi going on right now.
Hello,
Am I gonna
hello,
have to?
hello.
Okay, here we go. We're here.
All
We're
right,
here.
what the hell? I apologize. Regardless, as great as Brian Dable is, and understanding that he is an offensive mastermind, we're okay, correct?
You're good. We're good.
Okay. Understand that he is a mastermind. What are you doing not having him on the field more? He is your over-the-top threat. Last week against the Cardinals was integral in the comeback for 2 catches for over 80 yards, had the one big play that immediately put them into the red zone. Make it make sense that you are not putting him out there against one of the most dominant defenses in the National Football League. Give Daniel a chance when he's scrambling outside the pocket to look up and look downfield, because that's not happening with Darius Slayton. That's not happening with Wan'Dale Robinson, who made his debut and probably just played limited snaps coming off a torn ACL. Paris Campbell, what are we doing? Darren Waller, who's dropping passes. That's supposed to be the guy. It gets inexcusable to a certain degree. And I get it. As Giants fans, you don't want to see 1 and 2 in the loss column, or as the record, excuse me, and you don't want to wake up, look at the box score, and see that Daniel Jones once again had a terrible stat line. But once you turn on the tape, it's so blatantly obvious. There's so many bigger problems than Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is doing everything that he can to try and salvage what is already a horrendous situation. We could keep talking about the Giants and the Niners. It's up to you. I'm really getting angry. I'll read the fantasy output because that's ultimately what we are here for. Daniel Jones, 3.98 fantasy points. I already read the stat line. Really didn't even get much going on the ground. Only 2 attempts. It was really disheartening to watch.
I hope most people sat him. Unless you're in a 2 quarterback league, though, there is no world you should have been starting Daniel Jones this week. Even in a 2 quarterback league, I would have rather started Baker Mayfield. I'd rather start CJ Stroud this week against the Niners. Maybe it's easy to say in hindsight, but going up against San Fran with the offensive line issues, and then once you heard Saquon was out, Daniel Jones became a bottom 20 quarterback in fantasy this week.
Yeah, it's not hard to disagree with you, or to agree with you there. It's 100% sound. Daniel Jones, this matchup, it was written in the stars. Matt Breida did salvage himself a fantasy day. If you were a Saquon owner and you had to pick up Matt Breida on late notice because the RB market right now is just so paper thin, he goes for 11.8 fantasy points, 4 carries, 17 yards with a touchdown, but really got himself going if you were in PPR leagues with 3 catches, but only for 1 yard. Brightwell, very interesting, the rookie running back, 4 carries, 5 yards, not efficient on the ground. No one really was efficient. They really weren't running the football at all. This was primarily a passing offense tonight. But 4 carries, 5 yards for two catches on three targets, 31 yards. And he had a pretty bad drop that kind of stalled a drive. For the receivers, Paris Campbell was the Daniel Jones' primary target, 8.4 fantasy points in full point, 6 targets, 6 receptions, but only for 24 yards. Darius Slayton, three catches on 6 receptions for 32 yards, six fantasy points. Wan'Dale, it was good to see him back on the field. 4 catches, 5 targets, 21 yards. Isaiah Hodgins, who was one of the Giants' main reasons why they were so great down the stretch. Daniel Jones finally had a trustworthy guy. 1 target, 0 receptions. It is just insane that this offense just lacks this much juice. And it starts with the guys up front. And Darren Waller, 3 catches, 7 targets for 20 yards. I mean, it gives me such a headache when I look at this stat line, because he's supposed to be the guy, and he's not doing a damn thing. To talk about the Niners, because it's way prettier. Brock Purdy gets himself 20 fantasy points. He had himself a great day. Christian McCaffrey's going to be McCaffrey. 18 carries, 85 yards, and a tutty, 22.9. Of course, he's a force in the passing game as well. Dropped himself a touchdown. That kind of sucked. 5 catches, 5 targets, 34 yards. Elijah Mitchell, this was a huge surprise. because up until this point, we really haven't seen any backup on the Niners get any type of work. It's been really CMC dominant. I guess they figured they were going against the Giants. We can kind of go into a little bit of a cruise control. 11 carries, 42 yards, 3 catches on 3 targets, only for 2 yards, though. Very interesting to see if that's going to be a trend moving forward or if it's just the Giants and they figure, hey, let's rest CMC. What do you think?
I think more than anything, it was Thursday Night Football. You're on a short week.
True.
CMC, I think 100% of snaps last week or the first 2 weeks, he's played damn near every snap. Oh, yeah, Elijah Mitchell wasn't even active last week, now that I'm remembering.
Facts.
So I think more than anything, it was CMC just played all the snaps last week. We have a football game in 4 days. We can't have CMC take 100% of snaps again. I do expect Elijah Mitchell to be somewhat involved in the offense. I was shocked to see him as a healthy scratch last week, but I think it's somewhere between a healthy scratch and what he get 15 touches this week, 13 touches. It's going to be somewhere in between.
Yeah, Elijah Mitchell isn't a bad ball player. He isn't bad by any means. It's just the fact that you have the best in the game in front of you who can legitimately handle every single carry, every single catch in this running back offense. It's just the truth, and it's unfortunate for him. But it is what it is when you're behind the best in the game. Deebo Samuel in full point, 28 points. He was sensational. Really great to see him get back to that type of form. His yards after the catch today was special. Bell
he looked like vintage Deebo.
He did look like vintage Deebo, no
Deebo.
doubt. Bell goes and ruins anybody's first touchdown of the game bets by any means. He goes and gets to the end zone, 2 catches, 2 targets, 24 yards, and a touchdown. Juwan Jennings, who's been kind of a sneaky play, especially if you didn't have Brandon Ayuk going against the Giants. I couldn't blame you if you were desperate and you used a flex. He goes for five fantasy points, 2 catches, 3 targets, 31 yards. But George Kittle, and the tight end landscape, as thin as it is, goodness, what a great performance he had. 7 catches on 9 targets, 90 yards. Would have liked to see him get over 100 for that 100-yard bonus. Of course, I'm being greedy because I have Kittle in a few leagues. But goodness, he looked great. Now, as we talk about fantasy football and as we move on from this Giants and Niners game, we welcome on our guy, Adam from FTN Fantasy. Sir, thank you so much for joining us tonight. How are you doing?
What's up, guys? Appreciate the time. And Drew, just tell me how you really feel about the Giants. I mean,
yeah, man.
He hasn't said enough.
It was bad, though. It was bad.
I mean, it's really, what more can I say to defend the New York Giants when they've done nothing to help me? That win against Arizona was awesome because obviously down 28-7. I get the Cardinals stink, but comeback is a comeback, and Daniel Jones was near perfect in that second half. But tonight, the writing was on the wall. We all knew this would be the result, but for them to look this bad, nevertheless, still sucks.
Yeah, so I was facing Kittle in like 3 leagues, and I thought it would be worse. So I commend the Giants for doing enough. There was that drive, though, where he had like 4 for 50, and I was like, yep, that was felt like that was due. But that he had a drive alone where he had 4 for 45, and like you said, Drew, like, you'll take that drive for an entire game for like 90% of tight ends in fantasy. It's a mess.
The tight end landscape, yeah, for sure.
They were Kittle in the slot. I felt like I saw at least 5 or 6 catches was just Kittle in the slot, out route. Purdy hits him in stride. He breaks multiple tackles, gets 10 yards. That's what it felt like the entire game.
And there was a play in the red zone where they designed it for him, and he slipped off of his break, and Brock had to just kind of eat it. But I was fully expecting. As soon as I saw Ayuk was out, I was like, I checked every league I was in, faced him in 3, thought it'd be worse, but 90 yards, and he was due, right? We knew he was due. It's either a really underwhelming floor game for Kittle because he blocks so much, or a game like today where he has 90 yards where you don't really see many tight ends even break 50.
Yeah, last season towards the end of the year, George Kittle was Brock Purdy's guy. And I say that because I have George Kittle in a Dynasty league, and he was one of the main reasons I was able to bring home that championship. Brock Purdy and him had it was like 2 weeks in a row where George Kittle was putting up over 30 fantasy points. It was something just out of a movie. It was fantastic. But then for him to come out the gates kind of slow was kind of surprising just because of the chemistry they had last year. But you're 100% right. He's more than just a receiver, of course. He is one of the better blocking tight ends, arguably the best blocking tight end in the National Football League in 2023. So you understand when he has one of those games where he's 2 catches, 20-some yards. But then he can have a game like tonight when you don't have Ayuk and you need to rely on him, especially against a Giants defense who struggled so many years in a row against the tight end position. But let's get into our starts and sits of the week. Let's have some more fun. Let's brighten up the mood, of course.
Stop talking about the Giants.
Yeah, please, because that is just, you want to ruin a vibe. You want to kill a vibe? Talk about the New York Football Giants. But Joel, I'll start with you. Give me your quarterback, best plays, your best starts of the week.
This almost feels like cheating because this guy's the QB1 in fantasy football, but he's been so dominant. And this matchup, we're going to talk about more than just this player, but Kirk Cousins going up against the Chargers this week. I don't know if there's a juicier matchup on the slate. 54-point over-under, the highest of the week. And what has Kirk Cousins done this season? First in passing touchdowns, second in yards, third in completion percentage, fourth in pass attempts. And on top of that, the Chargers allow the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins, QB1, shocking people. I don't think he continues to be the QB1 all season long, but with their passing volume mixed with their inefficiency on the ground, Alexander Madison has not been able to do anything. So bad to the fact that they went and traded for Cam Akers. This is a team that's going to throw the ball a ton. We're going to, like I said, I'm going to talk about a lot of players in this game because on both sides of the ball, I'm expecting this to be a shootout. Both defenses are beatable. Both offenses should be great. So Kirk Cousins, it wouldn't surprise me if he has another top 5 quarterback performance.
All right, Adam, give me your quarterback best play.
Yeah, and can I just say, like, with how crazy both Vikings and Chargers games are every week, I don't want to know like how that game's gonna end down the wire. But
sure.
I'm excited as a
the
fan
over.
of the Bills and not those teams. I don't know how Chargers fans do it every week. Like,
Yeah, God bless.
I
They
don't.
find a
I
way to
tweeted
screw
it
up
like
every time.
last week. I was like, do you think they ever won a game like 27-10? Like, just
Just a comfortable,
Yeah.
calm, easy game.
it's
Hasn't
insane.
happened.
But
Doesn't exist in that realm.
speaking of comfortable wins, Dallas, I'm going to go with Dak. Like, quietly, Dak hasn't had to do much with Dallas's defense, and that might be the case again this week, but massive favorites on the road. I think Arizona's doing the thing where they play hard for the first half and then realize we should probably lose some games, if not all of them. But Dak was obviously super efficient last week against the Jets, and I think this is a really good spot for him because the Cardinals so far this season, 6th most yards per attempt allowed, and they've really struggled against play action, which is what Dak's doing a lot right now. 2nd most passing yards, 3rd most yards per attempt at 10.5 off play action this season for the Cardinals, and then Dak is top 5 in play action drop back rate. So I think this is a really good spot for Dak. He's been more of like a QB2 for me in my rankings, like right on that borderline. But he's inside the top 12 for me this week. Should have Brandon Cooks back, and the only thing that I think stops him from having a really good game is if Pollard breaks off a couple long touchdowns and defense keeps scoring. So, which both are possible, but I do like Dak this week quite a bit.
Talking about Dallas defense, tragic news, of course. Trayvon Diggs did tear his ACL. Just when it seems like things are going absolutely perfect for the Cowboys, the stars are aligning. This is the dominant team in the National Football League. They can't catch a break, and they have an instance like this. But I'm with you. Dak Prescott against the Cardinals should be all day, every day. He should have a dominant game. CeeDee Lamb should be one of those that you look to have a great game. But he definitely impressed me against the Jets, where he was just super efficient. 31 of 37. He really was able to do whatever he wanted against one of the premier defenses in the National Football League, in the New York Football Jets. But my best plays, I got 2 of them. One a little bit more obvious. One me giving my stamp of approval that not many are giving right now. One's going to be Trevor Lawrence against Houston. He had a terrible game against Kansas City. The offense really couldn't get anything going. The Kansas City Chiefs defense is underrated, though. They will be one of the better units by year's end. But going up against Houston, we saw Anthony Richardson really have a great game before going down with the concussion. I'm expecting Trevor Lawrence to get back on track. Not just Trevor Lawrence, but Calvin Ridley, Travis Etienne, who we may potentially talk about later in this show as well. This is a get-right matchup. And I think that going against Houston, a defense that is not – it potentially might not have Jalen Petrie. Right now, he's questionable. Right now, he's leaning towards playing. But Derek Stingley, who's most likely going to be out multiple weeks, not having him this week, it's going to allow Calvin Ridley to be even more comfortable than what he's already been so far in this Jaguars offense. I'm looking for Trevor to have a great game. And my next one, which is a little bit more spicy, is going to be Deshaun Watson against Tennessee.
He's back.
Tennessee has given up 2 weeks in a row over 300 passing yards to Derek Carr and Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, obviously, much better than Derek Carr. But that Saints offense that looked extremely underwhelming against the Panthers could do anything they wanted in the pass against Tennessee. Herbert's going to be Herbert, although in the overtime, let's not talk about it. He had a drive. He had a chance. Goes 3 and out. Titans go and they win that game. But in terms of fantasy football, Deshaun Watson is going to be the number one option in this offense without Nick Chubb. Hope you're doing well, Nick. If Nick Chubb's not going to be there, and with that front seven of the Tennessee Titans, specifically that defensive line, I'm not expecting Jerome Ford to have this dominant game. We haven't seen any running back so far be effective against this Titans defensive line. It's going to rely on Deshaun. And I think that if there were any game for Deshaun to break out, and he already said in his presser, if you look back to my 2020 season, I played like ass in the first 2 games as well, and I got my completion percentage up to 70%. I don't know if he'll get to 70% again, but I believe pretty firmly that he should have a great game against Tennessee. I think that the matchup is just written in the stars, and it's too perfect for me not to give in and believe he can have success.
And for all the people, I just see a few donations coming in and questions in the chat. We're going to get to those at the end of the show. We're going to go through our starts and our sits. So appreciate it. But we will get to that at the end of the show. Do we want to move on to... Yeah. So go ahead.
We're going to take a nice 15 minutes after the show. If you guys send your super chats, we will answer every single one of them, but we're going to dedicate that time towards the end of the show. I can start with my quarterback sit of the week. It's going to be Mac Jones against the New York Jets. Now, we saw Josh Allen struggle week 1. So we believed that week 2 that Dak Prescott would not be as effective, would not be as dominant as he ended up being. But I'm sorry. I'm still not going to lose faith and trust in this New York Jets defense. After kind of getting embarrassed to a degree against this Dallas offense, I'm expecting them to put forth a great performance against the New England Patriots with weapons, their best weapons being Hunter Henry, solid tight end, one of the better fantasy tight ends we have right now, and Kendrick Bourne. These aren't guys that are making me lean towards starting Mac Jones. Even in a 2-quarterback league where I get it, if you need a play and you had a guy like Daniel Jones and you felt, hey, I don't like this matchup against the Niners, I'd rather lean with a Mac Jones. It was a double-edged sword because I believe very firmly this Jets defense has to bail out Zach Wilson. One of the last times we saw him face it was a 9-6 game. There's not much offense to be had whatsoever. I really don't like anybody in this matchup unless your name is Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. That's only because they're superstars. And Mac Jones, where he's a slightly above average quarterback, has played well up until this point in the season. I'm not loving this matchup whatsoever. The Jets defense is simply just too good.
Has the lowest over-under of the week. I think the implied score is like 19-17 Patriots. It's going to be a low-scoring game. There's also going to be bad weather in that game.
I was just going to say that. Apparently, there's a tropical storm that might impact that game, the Colts-Ravens.
Washington
and then, of course, the Washington game where I'll be at, so that'll be fun.
Ooh,
oh, damn.
Not ideal.
So I'm in the PA area, but I was born in upstate New York. So I go to at least one Bills game every year. I'm going to probably 3 this year. When I tell you I can't remember the last time I was at a game where the sun was out, I am not bullshitting. I cannot remember. Yeah. So this will be fun.
That's tough. I'll go on to my QB sit here, and I'm sitting the QB2 in fantasy football this week. Jordan Love going up against the Saints.
That was mine.
I don't think anyone was expecting Jordan Love to be this fantasy dominant through 2 weeks. But this is all coming from touchdowns. He has 6 touchdowns on 30 completions. His touchdown rate of 11.5% is nearly double that of Patrick Mahomes, who led the league in touchdown rate last year at 6.3%. This efficiency is just not going to hold up. Jordan Love might have a decent game. He might throw for like 220 yards and a touchdown, maybe give you 20 rushing yards. But this Saints defense through 2 weeks has been elite. I know the competition they've gone up against hasn't been the great. You got Tennessee week 1, the Panthers week 2. But, I mean, they're not even allowing touchdowns. Outside of that garbage time at the end of the game against the Panthers, they were held to, 10 points through 55 minutes of that game? So I think the Saints defense is for real. Jordan Love has still been used, even though 6 touchdowns is like, wow, that's top of the league. He's still being used as a game manager. He's attempting no more than 27 passes through these
Number
first
one
2
in
weeks.
EPA per play, man. That matters, right?
It does. Jimmy G, same thing. Top EPA for years, but we knew what Jimmy G was. So I think it's written in the stars here. The regression is going to come. Jordan Love is not going to have 11% touchdown percentage for the rest of the way and throw like fucking 70 touchdowns on the year. And going up against the Saints matchup, looks like Christian Watson isn't going to play again. But Aaron Jones is back at practice, will be a huge boost to this offense. I think overall, though, these touchdowns will come down, and Jordan Love is probably a risky QB2 play this week.
Yeah, that was mine as well. Like you mentioned, the touchdown rate and EPA per play. Jordan Love has the third lowest completion rate from a clean pocket this season. So like he's gotten there on touchdowns, like you said. One of them last week came off one of those pop passes to
I was going to say, and also
Jaden Reed.
Jaden Reed made a nice play after the catch.
Yeah.
Also,
So like he's played fine, but there's going to be a game where everything comes crashing down in terms of the touchdown rate. And the Saints have allowed one 300-yard passer since the start of last season. So granted, they haven't played like this crazy stretch of really good offenses, but the personnel wise, like we know is a really talented, probably top 7-8 defense. So yeah, I totally agree with Jordan Love. Like if I had an option to pick up, I might play
Baker
like Kenny
or Jordan
Pickett
Love?
over him. Who? Baker?
Against Philly.
I would probably go Mayfield because he's at home. Philadelphia's secondary is completely depleted. I think they actually have allowed the highest passing touchdown rate in the NFL through 2 weeks. And like I'm bought into what Dave Canales is doing over there. I really am. Mike Evans is playing incredible. Godwin's still playing really well. So yeah, I would go Baker for sure.
all right, listen, Adam, we'll stay with you when we transfer over to our running back best plays. Who's your best running back on the week, and who's going to be your sit as well? We could just keep it the same.
Running back's so tough. Like I feel like anybody that's getting 15 carries, you just start and you just hope, because like I don't know. I've been doing this for a long time. I don't know if I can remember this many running backs being out. And it's not
a crazy list.
And it's not just like out for 2 weeks or, out for 3 games. Like we're losing players for the season, right? And it's really tough. But I will say, like, to start, it's like somebody I usually don't love for fantasy is Isaiah Pacheco, because his usage in the passing game is really hit or miss, and they don't give him the ball inside the 5. Like they run it with Kelsey. They do pop passes. They do anything else. And even last week, right? Weird game against Jacksonville where the offenses really didn't do anything. And Pacheco finished with, I think, 14, 15 carries. I think 8 of them came in the fourth quarter, which is like, okay, it's a little concerning. But now you have the Chiefs as massive home favorites against the Bears. So he could have like 12 carries in the fourth quarter this time. And dating back to last season, I think it's now like 12 or 13 straight games where the Bears have allowed 25 plus points. Like this is an awful defense. We'll see. I know McKinnon was on the injury report. Maybe if he's out, we get some more third down snaps from Pacheco. I just think if he gets 15, 18 opportunities and just give him one. Just give him one goal line carry. He'll convert it. It's insane. Like they'll do anything but give him the ball inside the 5. But I do like him quite a bit still. And again, like he's getting 15 touches on an elite offense. And at that point, like I don't know how you're sitting anybody with a pulse right now.
Yeah, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I should say, back to back. We saw Aaron Jones light up the Bears. Aaron Jones, one of the premier running backs in the league. But then we saw Rachaad White, who I'm not the biggest fan of, really have himself a great fantasy day against the Bears. It's really, if you're facing the Bears, put him in your lineup.
If Rachaad White's cooking you, there's an issue. He's been the least efficient running back from last year to now. And if he's cooking you, defense got a problem.
I liked Rachaad a lot coming out. He had a lot of versatility. He just doesn't – his vision's poor. Yeah, I mean, we can also attribute that to maybe the line isn't getting enough push, but with Tristan Wirfs back, he's been as dominant.
Got to get my man some Wi-Fi over there, Adam. I don't know what's going on today.
Dude, what is going on? I'm going to have to pay the bill, I guess. Yeah, we're all right now. But again, with the line being as iffy as it is, but Tristan Wirfs being back, being moved over to the other tackle and only allowing 2 pressures. I know that doesn't have to do anything with the run game, but he's got to get something going and hasn't done that up until this point. But a great game against the Bears. I understand you not wanting to sit anyone because of the landscape of the running back position.
Yeah,
but a lot of people.
I will say, though, I am so worried about Dameon Pierce. So, like, if you picked up.
You
if
are
you picked
telling
up
me.
Josh Kelly, if you picked up Jerome Ford, if you picked up, I mean, if we get no Justice Hill, I'm probably starting Gus Edwards over Dameon Pierce. Like, and I wasn't super high on him before preseason. And then there was a couple preseason games where he did not leave the field with the starters. He was playing third downs. And I was like, okay, if he's going to play third downs, he's going to be awesome because I think he's one of the more talented running backs in the league. But through 2 games, he's played under 50% of the snaps. The Texans, CJ Stroud is second, I believe, or tied for first in dropbacks. And he's not playing third downs. He's played 4 of a possible 30 third downs this season. So when are we going to get the game where the Texans are favored?
It's not
We're
going to
not.
happen. They're going to
Right.
be in
We're
a
not.
negative game script probably
Right.
damn
And
near
now you're
every
playing-
game.
And on top of that, like Jacksonville at home, I think they're implied to score like 26 points. Their run defense has actually been pretty good to start the season. Granted, they faced the Chiefs, who, we don't view them as a team that really utilizes the running backs. And then Deion Jackson, who had maybe the worst running back performance I've ever seen in my life in week 1. So Pierce is somebody that even in this landscape, in this, day and age with running backs, I would try to get away from. Like I said, if you pick somebody up off waivers, Kelly a couple weeks ago, Jerome Ford this week, Gus Edwards, like I'm starting all of those guys pretty easily over Dameon Pierce, and it pains me to say it really does.
I can understand Jerome in terms of volume, but this is going to be my sit of the week, actually.
Yeah, and I get it.
Tennessee has been so lock up against running backs right now. They are a top 4 rush unit in the National Football League. I think that Jerome for the long term is going to be a valuable option for a lot of fantasy managers, but a lot of fantasy managers just spend maybe over 50% of their fab if you are playing free agency bidding, which is what you should be doing.
Tuesday.
I wasn't going to out him, but $71 is what Joel Dehls spent to bring Jerome Ford home. But that is the landscape of running backs, and I can understand and sympathize with him because of the lack of running back depth there is, and that's exactly what Adam was alluding to. If you are getting over 15 carries, if you are in an offense and you are getting that amount of touches, that amount of looks, you need to be in people's rosters because of the amount of injuries that there are to a ton of superstars. Saquon, JT is still going to be on the pub. It could be back week 5. Kamara gets off suspension after this week. Chubb going down for the rest of the season. If I didn't already mention, Austin Eckler's already injured. Kenny Gainwell, even though that DeAndre Swift has come in and was amazing in his own right, there's just been so many guys that even now that we've seen the season go, he just mentioned Dameon Pierce, Khalil Herbert's not getting the opportunity that we thought that he'd get. Isaiah Pacheco's another one that we've expected him to be the primary guy, but you can't forget apparently that they're going out and sending out Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They're going out and still respecting Jerick McKinnon. There's just so much inconsistency at the running back position, but I'm letting you know that I still I can't stomach myself to put Jerome Ford up against this Tennessee Titans team. But to give you my starts, kind of risky. I'll give you the not so risky. Travis Etienne against Houston, one of the worst rush defenses in the National Football League for 2 years running. You go and you send out Travis Etienne. I think that he'll be one of the best plays this week. But Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, this is it, man. This is it. Same like Deshaun. If you can't go and turn up against a bottom 6 rush defense in the National Football League, in the Las Vegas Raiders, I don't know when you can do it. I don't know. Like, yeah, Chicago, Houston, if you face them, yeah, you go and you put Najee Harris. But is there really a matchup that you look at that is going to intrigue you down the line as much as this one if you are an owner of Najee Harris? If I'm an owner of Najee Harris, right, because I believe that he can have a great game against Vegas. The script is there for him to do so. If I'm an owner of Najee, I am strongly advocating to trade him off of my team because you're going to hopefully trade high on this guy. He should have the script that he goes and is dominant. I think it's a couple of weeks actually in a row that he gets decent matchups. He gets Vegas. He gets Houston. Then Baltimore, a bye week, week 6 against the Rams, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Green Bay, and we're almost into the fantasy playoffs at that point. Cleveland, not a great matchup. Cincinnati's rush defense up until this point has not been the best. Arizona, New England. And these aren't matchups that I love outside of that LV and Houston matchup back-to-back. After that, I'm expecting Najee Harris to play well, But after that, you look to trade this guy because your value won't be better than this. He lacks explosiveness. In the passing game, he's not much of a threat. Without Big Ben, we saw a 40 reception drop from his rookie season to his sophomore year. It just seems as if Jalen Warren also has a little bit more juice. These are two guys that I trust this week. They should have good game script. They should dominate against the Raiders. Warren's more so of a strong flex piece, RB3, but Najee Harris should have himself a top 12 finish. And if he does not have himself a top 12 finish, you become overly concerned with Najee.
If not now, then when? If it doesn't happen with these Steelers running backs, if it's not happening this week, like you said, Drew, it gets in some dangerous territory.
It's Raiders, it's Houston, and say a prayer.
I just finished that game too for breaking it down, and Harris, surprising absolutely nobody if you watch, has 2 of his 74 rushing yards before contact this year. The Raiders, though, have allowed the third most yards before contact per attempt in the NFL. We just saw Buffalo destroy them on the ground. I'm in the same boat. Like if Harris doesn't do it here, we'll probably say the same thing against Houston, to be honest. But it's like it's got to happen. And overall, like they are clearly in a bad spot offensively right now with Matt Canada's scheme and everything. They've also, to be fair, faced 2 of the 5 best defenses in the NFL. So this is the test, right? Like if they still look out of sorts on offense, then there's a massive issue at hand.
And I think the bigger issue is Matt Canada, of course, isn't great, but Najee Harris, just the player, does not look good. Even when he ripped off that 20-yard run where he runs to the left and cuts it back to the right, he is slow. Like
how many seconds do you think that play
running
took?
Backs I've seen. It felt like an eternity. It felt like it took 30 seconds for him to get to the left side to the right side of the field. I mean, as a player, he does not look great. And more than anything, I'm always someone who's going to bet on talent to rise to the top. Najee Harris does not look that talented right now. Jalen Warren looks like the more talented running back. Moving on to my running back start of the week. I'll be honest, Drew, did not see ETN in the dock. That was going to be my start, but I'm pivoting now. Raheem Mostert. He's someone that went 13th, 14th round, damn near undrafted in a lot of leagues. You had the Devon A-Chain hype. You had Jeff Wilson before he went on IR. But Raheem Mostert's been the workhorse back. I mean, if you're an NFL running back and you're seeing 73% of the offensive snaps, you are a workhorse. Week 1, only 10 carries for 37 yards. But against New England, 18 carries for 121 yards. And, of course, New England's going to take away what you do best, and that's going to be the pass game for Miami. Going up against Denver, whose defense has been very sketchy on both sides, right? They allowed the 10th most fantasy points to running backs. That pass defense has not been good. We saw Jimmy G and Sam Howell back-to-back have really efficient games. I think the Dolphins will be able to do whatever they want. I think they'll be able to pass on them. They'll be able to run on them. And if I have a chance to start a running back on a top 3 offense in the NFL who's going to be giving me 30 points, I'm talking about the offense scoring 30 points. He's got 3 touchdowns through 2 weeks. When it comes to the goal line, he's their running back. So I love Mostert this week. And really going forward, you could probably stick him in, as a top 20 running back, as long as he stays healthy, because he has an injury history. But as long as he stays healthy, top 20. My RB sit this week, this sucks because I'm deciding between Jerome Ford and this guy, Zach Moss. Who's going to be my RB2? And if Aaron Jones doesn't play, I'm going to have to start both.
You should repeat that again, by the way. We're in week 3, Dehls. We're in week 3, and that's your decision.
Or
Week 3.
Jerome Ford. This is what I'm dealing with. This is fantasy football. Zach Moss last week, waiver wire hero. He comes back in from the forearm injury, 98% of snaps, got all of the running back work, 22 touches, over 100 yards and a touchdown. But he got to play against Houston. If you got to play against Houston, I'm expecting that. This week, he's not as lucky going up against the Baltimore Ravens, who the first 2 weeks of the season have looked fantastic. They're allowing less than 10 total fantasy points to running backs. Dameon Pierce week 1, Joe Mixon week 2. At least coming into the year, a lot of people were high on both of these guys. We thought Pierce would be a workhorse. Of course, Mixon was going in probably round 5 or so, 4 or 5 at fantasy drafts. On top of this, you got Anthony Richardson dealing with a concussion. If he doesn't play, I kind of see both sides, because if he doesn't play, I do think Zach Moss as a check down will get more looks from Gardner Minshew than he would from Anthony Richardson. But without Anthony Richardson, I don't think this offense is going to be as good against Baltimore. He's just obviously the most explosive player they have. So if you're in a pinch, of course, you probably have to start Moss like I am right now, where I'm deciding between Jerome Ford and Zach Moss. I'm probably leaning Moss as of right now, just because I think I'd rather go up against Baltimore than Tennessee, who for years has been a fantastic rush defense. But like you said, Adam, to start the running backs section, if you're getting work, if you're playing 98% of snaps, you kind of have to be in people's lineup. But there's other guys, like if you manage to snag a Brian Robinson, of course I'm starting him. So Zach Moss this week, I think brighter days are ahead, at least till JT comes back. But this week, I'm not looking forward to it.
Before we move on from running backs, when's the Javonte breakout coming out, guys? Is this the week?
Should have been the second half of last week when the Broncos just decided not to run the football.
What the hell's going on?
Who are you rooting for this week, by the way?
100% the Dolphins. 100% the Dolphins. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. I'm rooting for the Dolphins. I don't want us to win a single game. And that's not an indictment on Russ. It's an indictment on the shit show that is the Denver Broncos team. He is not our biggest problem. But if we bring in Caleb, it allows us to just start over 100% new. And that's what I need. I think that's what we all need as Denver Broncos fans. But let's not, again, we're here for positive vibes, no negative vibes. Let's move on to the wide receiver starts and sits. I'll get this going. My start of the week is going to be, I have a few great plays. I think that this is going to be the game that we look at. Jamar Chase breaks out so long as Joe Burrow does play against the Rams. I only say that this is a start of the week because he started out so slow out the gates for week 1 and week 2. Jamar Chase, he should have himself a great game. That Rams secondary is not great. The Niners weapons, they were getting open over the top pretty easily. Brock Purdy missed 3 throws over the top that would have been, if not a for sure touchdown, a huge gain. I think that with obviously Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, that should be a great performance, and that should be his breakout of the season. Amari Cooper versus Tennessee. You go down the list. You had Olave turn up against Tennessee. You had Keenan Allen go off and be one of the best receivers on the week last week. I think that Amari Cooper goes and joins that list of dominant receivers to match my Deshaun Watson start of the week. I have to give some love to Amari Cooper. And the last name I have here, Puka Nacua against Cincinnati, just for the fact of this guy's not a one-hit wonder. He did it again last week. He set the record for most receptions to start a season. You go and you send out this guy as your wide receiver 1, and you don't think twice. You don't think twice about it. He had an injury. He did not practice today. I wanted to include this. He did not practice this time last week either. He still suited up and still saw double-digit targets against the San Francisco 49ers. Matthew Stafford's on another level right now. That tape, if you haven't, go ahead and turn it on. It's beautiful. His arm angles, his throws, they're unbelievable. And Puka Nacua is reaping the benefits of having him as his quarterback. And Sean McVay as one of the best play callers in the game. You go and you send that guy out there with a smile on your face.
You also don't even care about matchups with the Rams wide receivers because they're just running pre-snap every play. So even Tutu Atwell, I think leads the NFL in routes in pre-snap motion. I feel bad for Tutu because Kyron and Puka are getting all this love, and Tutu is over here having
for real. That's a very good point.
Breakout season too. I'm gonna go Jordan Addison for my start. I think what Dehls was talking about to start the show about that game being so good for fantasy. Addison's still the wide receiver 3 in terms of playing time for Minnesota, but he quote-unquote started last game with Minnesota actually in 2-wide set. He started over Osborne. Osborne still played more, but look, back-to-back games where Addison's had a long touchdown. And if this team's throwing the ball 45 times per game, it doesn't matter that Addison's not playing as many snaps as Justin Jefferson because they're running a ton of 11 anyway. And this is such a good spot. I mean, Jordan Addison already has 4 deep targets this season, tied with Jefferson for the team lead. 4 of his 11 targets have come off go routes. And the Chargers, we saw the Dolphins in week 1. They had 12 explosive plays that game. Last week, the Chargers gave up multiple explosive plays to Tennessee. Treylon Burks had a 70-yard catch. So far this season, the Chargers have allowed a 59% completion rate on passes, 20-plus air yards. It's the 7th worst in the NFL. The most receiving yards off deep passes. This is a spot for Addison, who's been doing a lot of his work down the field, pretty much everything they didn't get from Adam Thielen last season, to continue to have an opportunity to break off some long plays. And who knows, once that game finally happens where he's playing more snaps than Osborne and he's getting more routes than Osborne, he's going to be, I had him ranked pretty aggressively in the offseason as like wide receiver 29, wide receiver 30. And I think that could be his floor, honestly, on a weekly basis once he takes over the starting wide receiver 2 job. But yeah, like I have a team where I'm loaded and I kind of can't start him. And I want to because the spot is so perfect for him.
Yeah, and Addison, I think this is the week he takes over as the wide receiver 2.
Yeah, Osborne had some bad drops last week.
Yep. Multiple really bad drops that hit him right in the hands, and he just lost it. And like you said, Addison, week 1, 40-yard touchdown. Week 2, 62-yard touchdown. He went from 56% of snaps in week 1 to 70% of snaps too. Everything is stock up for Jordan Addison. He was one of my starts. My other one in the same game, Mike Williams. 13 targets last week, was tied for the third most in his career. 8 receptions for 80 yards it turned into. Not a touchdown yet, but everyone in this game you start. Of course, you start Keenan and Jettas, but Mike Will, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, of course, both the quarterbacks. This is a matchup where as many pieces as I can get, I'm trying to start and put them into this lineup. So Mike Williams, and I had Jordan Addison as both, but Adam gave a good dive there.
Mike Williams too.
Joel. Sorry about that, Drew. I just want to say Mike Williams is so interesting this season because in Kellen Moore's new offense, he's playing in the slot more. And so last year he played in the slot like 15% of the time. This year it's like 40%. And he's also being used closer to the line of scrimmage. Last year, his yards before the catch per reception was like pushing 10 yards. This year, it's at 6. So there's still going to be those games where Mike Williams has 120 yards and a touchdown. And maybe not to last week's extent where he has 13 targets, but maybe with this usage, there's more games where he has floor games where he's like 6 for 75, and his floor games aren't suddenly 3 for 38. Yeah. So
that's been his
I think
biggest
that's really
knock.
interesting with him.
Mike Will's been boom or bust. Like that's been his label basically since he's gone to the NFL. So if he's able to turn those floor games, like you said, from 3 points to 7 or 8 points, now you're looking at Mike Will like, okay, this is a guy that could finish top 20, top 15.
Now, Joe, let me ask you, the Vikings are top 8 pass defense right now. Did go against the Buccaneers. Take it as you will. Baker Mayfield, I know that's one of your favorite players. But against Jalen Hurts, they did limit the pass offense. It seemed to make him a bit uncomfortable, but it did come at the sacrifice of being one of the worst putting on one of the worst rush defense performances of the week. Do you have any concern? Do you think that can translate, or is it just offense this game?
Offense.
Yeah,
when DeAndre Swift has 170 rushing yards, why do you need to pass the ball? And they were winning for most of that game too. I know, of course, if you're looking at the box score, AJ Brown didn't have a good game. Smitty was fine. He had a really good game. But more than anything, it's okay. If you're not going to show me that you could stop the run, why am I even risking throwing the ball if I'm getting 7, 8, 15-yard chunk plays every single time Swift is touching the ball? I'm not a believer in this Vikings secondary yet.
Understandable. My sit of the week, DeAndre Hopkins. I really can't get myself to really get on board with D-Hop up until this point because he's been pretty underwhelming so far. Going up against Cleveland, there's just, especially because he hasn't been healthy to start the season, you get that DeAndre Hopkins treatment. I believe he did not suit up for practice today, but he will most likely end up playing. But going up against Cleveland, where they're going to be getting a ton of pressure on Tannehill, Denzel Ward, where he did not have his best performance against Pickens, he didn't have himself a bad game. I expect that DeAndre Hopkins will get his receptions, sure, but I don't think it'll be enough that he's a strong wide receiver play this week where you probably drafted DeAndre Hopkins to be your wide receiver too. He at best this week is a flex play. I don't love this matchup versus the Browns. He's going to be my sit this week. Dude, you like how I kept that in transition? Like I didn't stop?
That wasn't bad.
Dude,
wasn't
professional.
bad.
Professional.
What do you got, Adam?
My sit, sorry, Drew. You don't play Cortland Sutton when Jerry Jeudy's active. You just don't do it. He even had a decent game last
anybody. Don't play anybody on the Broncos. Even though we are playing Miami, it should be a good matchup. I'm just talking shit.
But Sutton's splits with Jeudy are so bad. So dating back to 2021, Sutton is averaging less than 6 targets, 3.2 receptions, under 40 receiving yards and just over 7 fantasy points per game in 24 games where Judy's played. He's really good when Judy's out, but and maybe, who knows, maybe they'll let Marvin Mims run more than 6 routes on Sunday. That'd be pretty cool.
God willing.
No, he won't do that. He won't do that.
But I'm out on Sutton and on Hopkins too. Like, the Titans are going to be so annoying with practice reports. So I try to tell people all the time, especially Wednesday practice reports. I know today's Thursday, but like Wednesday practice reports don't mean anything, especially for veterans. But like, we're seeing like Hopkins and Henry both like rest on Thursdays too. They might practice like 12 times all year. So, but yeah, overall, like the Browns D line should have an advantage over the Titans O line, and that's not good for the entire offense. Not good for Hopkins. And I don't think there's really a massive ceiling with him right now. Like, he's probably going to get like a 25% target share most weeks. But yeah, I actually agree with that call. He was barely inside my top 30 right now.
And if you look at snap percentages, week 1, 78%. Week 2, down to 60.
Yeah, they limited him last week. He mostly played in 11 personnel.
So, and Treylon Burks also, let's give him some credit. He had himself a solid performance. Of course, Joel Dehls, Mr. Treylon Burks, true to himself. He had himself a great game, and Treylon's not going to be a slouch. He's going to draw his fair share of looks. But up until this point, you can't trust D-Hop until you see it. And this is not the matchup for you to go out there and trust DeAndre Hopkins. If you're desperate, of course, you go and you send them as your flex. Maybe your wide receiver too. Hope for the best. But this isn't the week that you really feel great about it.
I traded him last week.
I move on to my set of the week here. And this is someone that I was high on coming to the year. Drew was even higher on, but Jahan Dotson hasn't worked so far.
Damn, that
and
makes
it
3
sucks
of us.
because it sucks because he has the most targets on the team, but he's 4th in receiving yards. His ADOT is like 9.3. The way the Commanders and Eric Bieniemy are using him is a bit mind-boggling because he is one of their most explosive weapons, so you'd expect him to get more downfield shots. But almost everything's been underneath. I mean, week 1, 5 receptions for 40 yards. Week 2, 3 receptions for 22 yards. We haven't seen that same explosive player that we saw for spurts last year before he got banged up due to injury. This week he's going up against the Buffalo Bills. Now, there is a chance the Commanders will be playing catch up for a majority of this game. So if you want to find a silver lining, maybe it's, they're going to be playing catch up. Dotson will get his looks, but last week, they were playing catch-up, too. They were losing 20-3 to the Broncos. Sam Howell had a great day, and Jahan Dotson had 20 receiving yards. So if it's not going to happen in that game script, what game will it happen in? I trust at some point Jahan Dotson's talent will win out, and eventually he'll become fantasy relevant. But right now, we're talking about the wide receiver 74 on the year. I mean, I was in a pinch in one of my leagues. I had Ayuk. I have to sit him, and I have to start Dotson. I feel terrible about it. I have no other option. I have to start him. I'm looking at like him and Kendrick Bourne. I'm like, well, I'm not starting Kendrick Bourne in a rain game against the Jets, so I guess I got to go with Dotson. But to have the most targets on the team and be 4th in receptions for a player of his caliber, it's really mind-boggling.
He was like my favorite receiver. Obviously not, among the elites, but like my favorite kind of under the radar start last week because PS2, who by the way, Drew, is the best DB in the league.
Damn right, baby.
For 2 weeks, got it.
No, he's the best, period.
I
boy.
think he's the best
Stop
because he shadows, but Sauce is dope too.
Sauce says he wants to shadow. Let's do it.
He should.
And he's a hold merchant. I mean, and PS2 doesn't drop clear pick sixes either.
But so I thought he would shadow Terry last week, and Dotson would, see Damari Mathis, who's been getting destroyed through 2 weeks, and just didn't come to fruition. And yeah, like I was with you guys. I was so high on him. It's not over yet. It's only 2 weeks, but maybe you can make the same kind of argument if Trey White follows Terry this week. I don't think Terry's 100% yet from that toe either. But
he had a nice ass catch over Damari against us.
Yeah, Sam Howell's making some throws.
That was a dot fact.
Sam Howell's making some throws.
Are you Sam Howell guy?
So not this week. But
Okay,
in general,
obviously,
yeah, I was. Between him, I'm a huge EB fan. Like I think he's done a great job with that
Definitely.
offense. But this week, he can have a bad game, and then we'll go back to rooting for him. But overall, like I think he's the most exciting quarterback this team's had in years for sure.
Okay, I'm with you. Who was your wide receiver sit this week?
Mine was Sutton.
Sutton facts.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
So
If
we'll move
if
on.
you're in the stream, like the stream, by the way. We got over
That's a
100 people in
fact.
here. Like the stream. Show us some love.
So, best tight end play. Now, we like to preface this with the idea that we understand that the tight end position is dog shit. It is not great. However, we are off to a really hot and cold start. George Kittle goes and puts up, if you're playing PPR leagues, a nice 16 fantasy points, 7 catches, 90 yards. You're loving that. But then on the opposite side, you have Darren Waller, who a lot of people drafted pretty high, me included. I'm pretty sad. I'm pretty upset. And you go out there and you give me 3 catches for 20 yards. Not ideal. That's just the tight end landscape right now. But we can come together. We can try and come to a mutual agreement on who we're not going to be starting, who we are going to be starting. Who I'm going to be starting, you're going to hear his name every single week until he does something else, is going to be Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta, 2 weeks in a row, is seeing a ton of opportunity. Rarely ever is he going to be off the field. I trust that Sam Laporta going up against, I forgot, I had to turn my internet off regardless. Sam Laporta is going to be a great matchup. You trust that he can continue the success, especially with how prolific this Detroit Lions offense has been. Right now, they are a top 3 offensive unit in the National Football League. He's going to continue to get love. Josh Reynolds, let's give him some credit. Through 2 weeks, he's been fantasy relevant and really shocking, where he got 80 yards week 1, was able to get into the end zone twice last week against Seattle. I just think that you look at Detroit, you see how much continued success they're going to have on offense. Sam Laporta's volume's only going to continue to go up as Jared Goff and him gain more and more of rapport. I think that he has to be in your lineups every single week. With how terrible the tight end landscape is, he's one of those that I'm sending out there regardless of matchup. And my sit of the week, I was boasting about him last week against Miami, against Philadelphia. He's been, I believe right now he's tight end 2, Hunter Henry, going up against the New York Jets. It's not a matchup that I'm overly excited for. The Jets should really hone in on Hunter as he's the primary weapon of this offense, not named Ramondre Stevenson. However, this isn't going to be a great matchup. We already spoke about how the weather conditions aren't going to be great. Hunter Henry's not a play that I'm looking for. He's going to be a start. You're starting Hunter Henry because the landscape is so bad. I understand. I'm just letting it be known that I don't think he's going to be having a great fantasy output.
So Sam Laporta was definitely on my list as well. And let me ask you this, both of you
Going up
guys.
against Atlanta. Thank you very much.
So if you can only start one tight end from that Lions-Falcons game, who is it? Because for me, it's Sam Laporta.
Porta. Kyle Pitts
You're
is my
not-
set of the week.
What
Kyle
kind
Pitts
of
can be my set of the week every single week until
It
he does something.
sucks, man. It's
It's
if you just put him on like a league average in terms of passing rate offense, he would smash. But it's just ain't it. Laporta, by the way,
Get him a quarterback. Get him someone that is actually enthusiastic about throwing the football.
I mean, like it's weird too because we knew coming the season Atlanta would be like bottom 5 in pass rate. We knew they would throw the ball to the running backs more with Bijan, but we didn't expect it to be this rate. I mean, Bijan is like a 24% target share. And Kyle Pitts is literally, the role hasn't, like they don't scheme anything for him. It's just run a go route, run vertical stuff. And if we throw it, it's a contested catch. That's probably a bad throw. And it's just like, there's no floor and it sucks because he's so talented. But for me, I'm going back to Dallas with Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson leads the entire NFL in targets inside the 5-yard line. He leads all tight ends in red zone targets. He scored last week. He probably should have scored twice in week 1. I mean, it's not the same role as Dalton Schultz because he's not running as many routes and he's not seeing the target share that we saw with Dalton Schultz when he was with Dallas. But look, most tight ends don't have a floor anyway. And if I'm finding somebody that's in a good offense getting so much touchdown opportunity, yeah, I definitely want to look to Jake Ferguson, especially against the Cardinals, who they allowed 11 touchdowns to tight ends last year, the most in the NFL. So for me, Ferguson is like just outside my top 12. And if he starts to run more routes and get more route participation and snaps on top of the red zone work, he's going to be in the top 12 pretty much every single week. So Laporta was on my list, and so was Jake Ferguson, who I like quite a bit, along with Dak, obviously.
Who's your sit?
My sit, it's tough, obviously, like you guys mentioned. But for me, like I have, I don't feel great about Kyle Pitts to start with. But for me, like there's one player in that game, Dehls with the Chargers and Vikings, that I don't want to start. It's Gerald Everett. Like he is losing playing time to Donald Parham. Last year, when Donald Parham finally came back, Everett's snaps went down. This year, they were league at mid, and then last week he got outsnapped by Donald Parham. And it sucks because I think Gerald Everett's the most underrated tight end in the NFL. In terms,
he had some really impressive runs in that last game.
I think there's one tight end. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's one tight end in the NFL that's better after the catch than him, and it's obviously Kittle. I don't think anybody else is better after the catch than Gerald Everett. He's so good. The problem is
Kelsey.
Gerald Everett is better after the catch than Kelsey, I think.
Kelsey? I don't know, man. He's had some pretty amazing
Gerald
plays
Everett is
after the
so
run.
good after the catch. I mean, Kelsey, whatever. Kelsey's...
He's Kelsey. Facts.
Yeah,
he's literally Kelsey.
But, in terms of, just on a per-play basis, when he gets the ball, it's not Zach Ertz, 1 catch, 3 yards, fall down. The problem is, like I mentioned, his snaps have come way down with Donald Parham playing more, and his ceiling is 4 targets. And, again, he can make plays on 4 targets, but... It's just been really frustrating. A player I'm high on. I would try to get away from him just because when you're streaming tight end, you're not looking for really snaps or you obviously want to be in a good offense, but I'm looking for routes, period. Point blank, period. And he's not running as many routes as he should or as I think he should. So even in this matchup, Minnesota obviously should be a high scoring game. I would try to get away from him. Pick up one of the tight ends we talked about. Pick up obviously Laporta he should not be available in any league. Same goes for Dalton Kincaid, who might have no Dawson Knox this week. So it sucks. I love the player, but I would try to get away from him just until we see him play more, which they love Donald Parham. So I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, Laporta right now owned in 72% of leagues. So if you're in that,
it's about 28% too low. Yeah,
go figure it the hell out. All right, Joel. Do we want to get into injuries or do we want to go right into the chat start sits?
Yeah, let me get my tight ends off because I got a little disrespectful.
Facts. Sorry, bro.
I got a little disrespectful about a specific tight end in Pittsburgh.
There's no way you're about to make him your start of the week.
And you know what?
Bro.
I'm doing a 180 because I said to drop him. Drew said you're getting ahead of yourself. I'm going all in. Pat Fryermuth, this is the last chance you get. Going up against Vegas, this is the last chance you get, Pat Fryermuth. If you have 1 catch again, your ass is getting cut.
2 catches for 5 yards is crazy.
But going into the week, this is a great matchup. He should get more looks. You're not going up against an elite defense. So I'm putting in Pat Fryermuth. I'm ready to get my heart broken again. And my sit for the 3rd week in a row is Kyle Pitts. It hurts my heart because he is so talented. 1,000 yards as a rookie, the 2nd most of all time. Or did he break Dicker's record? I don't remember. 2nd or 1, whatever.
Let me ask you,
now
bro.
he just doesn't get used.
Is Kyle Pitts available? I'm
Dynasty?
talking about Dynasty, correct? Is he available?
You're just going to offer me something disrespectful.
What do you mean? I love to offer you good things. You tell me that it's not good enough. I need this guy. I'm trying to win, and you don't accept.
My issue with Kyle Pitts is I know he's fucking elite, so I'm not looking to trade him.
Bro, come on. Right now, you have Travis Kelce already. You don't need him. Adam, let me ask you, and then we can get into injuries and starts and sits. Or excuse me, your guys' starts and sits decisions. I offer you 3 firsts, 24, 25, 26 for Breece Hall right now. Do you accept yes or no in a dynasty?
3 firsts for Breece Hall?
Let's say you have 4 firsts in 2024 already and 2 firsts in 2025. And you have 5 good players on your roster. You're rebuilding.
He has no good players outside of Bijan, Breece Hall, Jalen Waddle, and Kyler Murray's injured right now.
And A-Rich.
Yeah, facts. Anthony Richardson.
Do they project? I mean, obviously, the ones that aren't this next coming season, we don't know. But, are they contending?
They're late first.
They're going to be late first?
Yeah.
My team's amazing. I just won last season.
3 firsts is...
3 firsts is 3 firsts. That's exactly what I'm saying.
At some point, I need to put someone in the starting lineup.
Come on, man. You are locked to get Caleb if you go and tank. We're in a 2 quarterback league.
Next year, I could have A-Rich, Caleb, Breece, Bijan. Why not?
It's Superflex?
Superflex.
Yeah, Superflex.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. We all knew, especially you, Dehls, how good Breece was. And then I watched what he did against Buffalo in week 1. I was like, yeah. I traded him last offseason, but it was part of a Bijan trade, so I'm feeling fine about it, right?
For sure, you should.
But, I know they want to limit him, but if he gets if he doesn't get more than 4 touches this week, there's a problem. But no, that trade's interesting. I would probably still, even in circumstance, be hesitant to trade Brees Hall, but I get it. I really do.
I'm
Doesn't
one
help
piece
that he's
away.
a Jets fan, by the way. It's not going to
No,
help.
that's what it is. I know I'm pulling. Would you accept the 3 firsts for Bijan? No. So I said Brees Hall. I was reasonable.
It's
Yeah,
definitely
regardless. I think
definitely not
Brees-
like an outlandish trade.
Yeah, I still think Brees is RB2 in Dynasty.
My thing is,
I think
I
Bijan's
don't
RB1,
send
Brees RB2.
disrespectful trades.
I have him as
When I
RB3
know-
just because I still have
respect-
JT, but I get it.
When I know and I respect you as a man, I send deals to get them done immediately. I'm not here for the chit chat, no back and forth. I like an immediate deal. I send you an offer that I think is fair on your end, fair on my end. Let's get a deal done. Let's shake hands and move on. People don't see that way. They want to sit down, have a drink. You want some snacks? Let's really talk this over. That's not who I am. I'm a get it done kind of guy.
I was the same way. That's why I was like, that's why I declined it. You said no counter. I said I'm just going to decline it because you're not going to give me players.
That was such a quick conversation. I'm just like, are you kidding me? No counter. He sends 3 texts. I didn't answer a single one of them. I said, we'll talk about it later. All right.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to do starts and sits, or we want to go through injuries?
Let's quickly go through injuries because
All right,
there's let's just get this out of the way. We'll talk about all of your questions. A few of the concussions we're still dealing with that we really aren't going to know until game time, right? We got Anthony Richardson still dealing with concussion. Jalen Waddle still dealing with the concussion. Devontae Adams has been cleared now, so that looks good. But these guys we're really not going to know about until the time comes. So unfortunately, we can't give you a ton of advice right now. The other guys, Joe Burrow, didn't practice today. I'm leaning towards him being out. If
Well,
you
did you see
are
what happened
playing on
today?
Monday, what happened?
They only have 2 quarterbacks on their roster.
Oh yeah, Greer got signed, right?
Yeah, so a lot of people think that's a sign that Joe Burrow might play. So it's something to keep an eye on. But like, obviously, it's past the game now. But I was telling, and if I had Joe Burrow on a team, I would have started Brock Purdy tonight over him. Like, I would have played it safe. But like now, like if you can pick up Stafford and just kind of wait and see. Yeah. Worst case, you start Stafford if he doesn't play. But yeah, like I'm sure you guys talk about it a lot. That's such a tough situation for them because if you go 0-3, you're not out of it completely, but it's not going to be easy to get back.
No, not at all. A couple of other injuries going around. We have Amon-Ra, who's dealing with turf toe. I'm looking up on the spot actually because I didn't have the notes. If
he was limited today.
Or not. He was limited. Okay, that's a good sign that he'll be returning. Garrett Wilson got the wind knocked out of him. He should be fine. Of course, Ayuk today didn't end up playing. DeAndre Hopkins, we talked about a bit earlier. He was non-participant, but like we said, the Titans injury report weekly, Adam mentioned it. It's just going to be a hassle. A guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who is a vet, he could get
even
time
last
off.
week. Like he didn't practice at all last week, and I knew he was playing.
He ended up playing.
He'll always
Aaron Jones is another one who ended up limited today in practice. I think that's a great sign for him to play. If he's limited again on Friday, I think he'll be playing. If he ends up being a DMP, he gets downgraded tomorrow. Very risky. You got Justice Hill dealing with an injury as well. I lean towards him not playing as it stands right now. If
Fire
he doesn't
up
play,
Gus.
They don't expect him to play. He has
right
turf
now.
toe as well. They don't expect him to play. They activated Melvin Gordon. They signed Kenny and Drake. So yeah,
that's a great sign that Gus said, or excuse me, that he will not be playing. I'm going through Christian Watson, another guy who still hasn't practiced. I don't think he's going to be playing this week. Did I miss anyone else? I feel like that's the majority of them.
Watson is interesting.
Mark Cooper was back.
Watson's interesting because they said it was rest related and not the hamstring. So it's very weird. Like I
think you wait one more week.
Yeah. Yeah, like he could be limited for sure with a hamstring.
Even if you're a fantasy owner, you may, I don't know. If you're desperate, you're desperate. You need to start someone. You go and you send Christian Watson. You drafted him relatively high for him not to play 2 weeks in a row. Yeah, you're going to want to see him in your lineup. But I don't know. I feel like you got to play it safe.
I did miss a couple running backs. Austin Eckler, of course.
He's probably not playing.
Yeah, trending towards not playing. Derrick Henry popped up in the injury report. It does say it was for rest on Thursday, so I wouldn't be too concerned. And the other one's David Montgomery, who the words kind of got messed up. He said like, oh, it's going to take a couple weeks to heal, but heal means you could kind of play through it, right? And then the coach came out, Dan Campbell said, oh, he's day to day. I don't feel great about it right now. Do you guys know if he practiced today or not?
He didn't practice Wednesday. He didn't practice Thursday. They have Bam Knight. They activated him off the
Jet
practice
legend.
squad. So
Yeah, so it doesn't look great for David Montgomery. Fire up Jahmyr Gibbs.
can't
Another
wait for Craig
person
Reynolds
who,
to play all the snaps in the goal line.
yeah, and I'm gonna
It'll be
throw up.
sick.
Another person who did not practice today, James Cook, but for positive reasons. He just had a
Yeah.
baby. I'm
Shout out James
extremely
Cook,
happy
man.
for my guy, James
Congrats.
Cook. That's Drew signed and sealed breakout player of the year, 17 carries over 100 yards last week. And now going into the new week, gets to come in with a new child. Put your house on it. He's scoring a touchdown
Anytime.
this week.
They better
Of
give him
course.
one goal line carry. He's got zero inside the
zero,
5 through
yeah,
2
facts.
games.
He's got to be wearing the white undershirt with his baby's name on it, scores a touchdown, pulls it up. That's what I'm expecting.
2 weeks in a row, 59% snap percentage. Can you do me a favor when you're at the game? Talk to McDermott and tell him, get him on the fucking field. He's too damn good to not be the getting at least
He is,
70%.
I was debating my next Bills jersey purchase, right? He's up there, but it's got to be Matt Milano. But I'm getting more excited about him like not even every week, like every day. Like every time I see him in practice, carry the ball once, he's not going to be the Jonathan Taylor or the Derrick Henry that Bills fans have been kind of wanting to trade for, but he's probably going to be the best running back they've had since probably LaShawn McCoy, but obviously much, not as old as McCoy was when he came to Buffalo. I'll try to talk to Ken Dorsey while I'm there.
I appreciate that. I think that with age, he'll get bigger. His build, his frame, he will get bigger. Just right now, he's not the biggest of running backs, and he's not obviously the tallest, but he's super quick, and he's definitely versatile.
They're throwing him the ball too, which is
rightfully
fun,
so. When you don't have that many options, honestly, I say this with all due respect. I'm a Bronco fan. There's really nothing for me to really write home about. Regardless, it's Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, too inconsistent for my liking. I'm as big of a Dawson Knox fan as you can be, I guess, right? For whatever he is. But then you have Kincaid, who you drafted pretty high. That's kind of a confusing thing because they're still giving Dawson Knox red zone targets. So there's got to be someone that you can rely on when Josh is in a bind. Just dump it off to, and James can easily do that. Let's move on to these super chats and just regular questions. We're here to answer all of them. Shout out to our guy, Clicky Keys, Ricky, Bronco Legend, says, "What's up, fellas? This is Ricky. I traded Keenan Allen, Zach Moss for Debo and Tank Dell. Then I traded Nico Collins for Joe Mixon. About to try and flip Joe Mixon for Alvin Kamara. I feel like I don't mind that. Mixon has looked better than I thought coming into the season. He definitely is one of the brighter spots of this offense so far into these 2 weeks where they haven't looked the best outside of the last 2 drives that they've had. But trading Keenan Allen, that kind of stings, but Debo looks great. There's a lot going on in this. I think if you can get Alvin Kamara for Mixon, I would do it. I love Alvin Kamara when he comes back. He will be fresh. He will be the primary target, and they will. Derek Carr and him will have a connection. Alvin is Alvin. That's obvious. As for Keenan Allen and Zach Moss for Debo and Tank, Debo, he's amazing. He's amazing, and I think that he will continue to be amazing so long as he's healthy. But there is that question mark of durability with him and whether sometimes he does too much after the catch. And we saw that in the Giants game where he kind of went down and he came up and he was grabbing his rib because it seemed as if he just kind of got the wind knocked out of him because then obviously he came back and scored that touchdown. But that's just like the up and down battle that you have with Deebo Samuel. It's just that Keenan Allen, who also last season did struggle with injury, up until that point, he's had a pretty clean bill of health outside of the torn ACL, which was years ago at this point now. Keenan is one of the most reliable fantasy guys that there is. He's going to get you a ton of points in PPR. Him and Justin Herbert, it's obvious that Justin Herbert and him, that's the one for Justin Herbert. And you look at the stretch of games last season with Keenan Allen, he was one of the most dominant fantasy wide receivers when he came back from injury. If you had Keenan Allen, he was a league winner for you. And I say that as someone who went through that experience. Keenan Allen won me a championship. He was phenomenal because of the volume that he gets. So I don't know if I love this deal just because of the uncertainty that is Debo, but Debo's ceiling so high that I can understand making this move.
Yeah, Keenan, he came back from the hamstring week 11 last season. Since then, including the games this season, he's averaging 7.5 receptions, 10.2 targets, 86 receiving yards, and just under 20 fantasy points per game. He has been
Elite.
unbelievable. And for the Mixon and Kamara trade, I have them so close that it just really comes down to personal preference. But like with Jamal Williams out, I don't expect Kendre Miller to get a massive workload starting this week, and then obviously when Kamara's back next week, he might just, especially with the landscape of the position, just might go right back to being like, I don't want to say vintage Kamara where he's like top 3, but man, like Derek Carr has not completed a pass inside the 10-yard line this season. So
No, him in the red zone's atrocious.
it's been so bad. So I think that's close enough for me. But did you trade Collins straight up for Mixon? Because that's about as good of a sell high as I could find. And I love Collins, but
Yeah.
I'll take
I
any
don't
running
know.
back at this
Yeah,
point.
no, that's true. That's true, especially one in that offense of Cincinnati. Even still with its ups and downs that we've
If you
seen
can,
so far.
if you can buy low on any, like I traded for Jamar Chase last week, and like I thought
you
my
give
team
up?
was gonna win the whole thing, but then Chubb went down, so now I'm just like trying to kind of piece things together. But I traded for Jamar Chase. Like same goes for Mixon. If you can trade for him, the
Let me
Bengals
ask a
offense is going to
question.
get back on track.
I have
What'd you give up
Drake
for Chase?
London. Oh, go ahead.
What did I trade for
What'd
Chase?
you give up? What'd you give
So,
up for him? Yeah.
I traded Calvin
This is
Ridley.
redraft?
Yeah, I traded Calvin Ridley, Javonte Williams, and DeAndre Hopkins and Dalton Kincaid for Chase, Miles Sanders, and Devonta Smith. So I was very happy with that trade.
Oh, damn.
Yeah,
And
I was very
Sneak.
Devontae's just like, here's a
Okay,
little
that's not
add
bad.
in.
Yeah.
Here's a
I
little
was very
add
happy with
in.
that trade, but now I'm starting. Now Miles is my running back 1 because I had Chubb and Dave Montgomery. So
I
That's
got
it's
you.
tough.
it's tough.
That's
But
tough.
it's hard to find a team where you are completely safe right now.
You know what? I'll ask my question at the very end of the show. Let's get to your guys' questions. Emmanuel Brown question. Start Aaron Jones with only one practice coming off the hamstring against the Saints defense. And like Adam's been saying legitimately all episode, if they're going to get volume, you do have to start them because of the landscape of running back right now.
Start Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones also, it's not like he's a running back that when he's fully healthy gets 25 touches anyway. He's usually in that like
Facts.
14 to 18 range. So like he can matchup's bad, but he can still be really good like he always is on,
And if they're using him in
13
the
to 15
passing game like
touches. Yeah.
if they're using the passing like they showed week 1, the upside's there.
By the way,
I'm on-
most
Go ahead.
most underrated running back in the NFL, Aaron Jones.
Easily.
Been great.
Easily. He's
So
one of the
good.
most efficient running backs, and on top of it, he's one of the best receiving running backs. You're so 100% right. I'm showing this out of respect for my brother. Shout out to my brother Sean, Joe Burrow, or Zach
Sean.
Wilson. We know what the vibe is. Emmanuel, Aaron Jones first off the hamstring.
Oh, we just did this.
or James
there,
Cook versus
yeah, there I would
Sanders.
bench Aaron Jones.
Yeah, James Cook.
James
You
Cook.
fire up James Cook. Aaron Jones. It's so tough. It's so tough. For the sole fact that Aaron Jones is Aaron Jones.
Here's the thing though. They're both gonna have the same amount of touches probably. If anything, I think Jones might get a little less. And we don't talk about it, but AJ Dillon dominates goal line work for this team since the start of last season. So like they're in similar roles.
But AJ
and
Dillon also stinks.
He
He's so
sure
bad.
does. But they like him at the goal line. And so you're looking at both running backs probably getting 14 to 16 touches, but one's in the much better offense and one's healthy. So I would start James Cook, honestly. But
Derrick
it's close.
Henry in limited opportunity, only 48% of snaps against New Orleans, 15 attempts, 63 yards. I know Aaron Jones isn't a bruiser. I know that I only bring this up because he did have limited opportunity. He still was able to be running back 15 on the week against that Saints team without being on the field for over 50% of the time. I love James Cook. I definitely want to start him. This is a tough decision. I think that I lean with Adam here. It's probably safer to go with James just because he does not carry a hamstring injury. A hamstring injury, I say it constantly, it's one of the least injuries you want to have a player on your team have because it lingers. And Aaron Jones, who's up there in age, it's not an ideal situation.
I think I'm leaning Aaron Jones here. It's close, but
You also obviously don't have to decide now because like I don't know if it happens, but like there's still an outside shot that Bills Commanders game gets like moved. Like if this tropical storm is that bad, like again,
Are you hoping for that?
Absolutely not. I've been
Oh
me and my
no, I
buddy.
only mean it because so you're not in the rain.
Oh no, listen. It wouldn't have mattered. Like I cannot remember the last time I was at a Bills game when the weather was nice. So whether it's in Washington, Buffalo, it doesn't matter. But yeah, obviously, like there's still a chance Jones doesn't play because like he could be limited in practice to end the week. But they could say, you know what, one more week, play it safe. We need you for the full season. And like you mentioned with the hamstring, like especially after watching so many running backs go down this past 2 weeks, like they could easily just be very, very cautious with him. So.
And of course, you're part of Bills Mafia, and Bills Mafia, they show up rain or shine. They don't give a shit.
No.
Shout out to AJ Loves You. He says, which two should I start? ETN, Derrick Henry, or Ramondre? ETN for sure. I think we all agree on that.
Derrick
one.
Henry's the other one.
Yeah, I'm
Derrick
benching
Henry.
Ramondre, not a good matchup, and like we
No.
said, the weather's going to be terrible in New Jersey, so I'm staying away from really everyone in that game. I guess you got to start Garrett Wilson, right? But no, you don't.
He's like my wide receiver 31, and I hate it.
Shit.
You listen. You kind of have no choice. Even last week in a shitty matchup versus the Cowboys, he was still able to be fantasy relevant.
If you have Nico Collins and Garrett Wilson, who are you starting?
Oh God.
Which a lot of people probably do.
I can't live with
I would start
sitting
Garrett.
Garrett. I can't live with it. One of my friends sat Garrett Wilson, and he was punching himself because Garrett Wilson's Garrett Wilson.
What happens if I don't know if it was Gilmore? What happens if he makes that tackle and it's a 15-yard catch instead of a 65-yard touch? I know I don't like playing that game, but like his, I hate even when that game was on and I saw Rodgers go down, I was just distraught. It sucks. And Garrett Wilson, I mean, you saw like Trey White's one of my favorite players in the league, and I don't think he could have covered him any better in that touchdown catch. And I was just like, that's a really good football player making a really good football play.
Shout out to our guys over at the Ball Game Podcast. They go and they comment. Christian Watson, Zay Flowers, Nico Collins. I can start 2 of them. I don't feel great starting Christian Watson. It's Zay and Nico.
I don't think Watson's playing. So if Watson has to play, it makes it very easy. Even if he does play, it's Zay and Nico very comfortably. I need to see Watson stay on the field before I could trust in my lineup.
And Nico, we've talked about it ad nauseum at this point. He's top 6, I believe, right now in targets right now in the NFL. Him and Stroud have an obvious connection. Nico's been amazing 2 weeks into the season. You got to go out there and you got to start him. If not, go ahead and sell high on Nico and hopefully get someone that you can trust more week to week.
The Colts have played obviously 2 games because everybody has other than the game tonight. Through 2 games, they've already allowed 4 receivers to finish inside the top 20. Like their secondary is completely toast.
Yeah, they're cooked.
Emmanuel Brown said, pin this. So I did. I'm real.
Shout out Emmanuel.
Colin Wisdom says, Laporta or Mark Andrews? Don't do that, man.
Let's not get carried away here.
Let's not do that. Angel Vasquez says, we investing more in Ford or Hunt for RB2 value? Joel, I'm going to move this on to you.
I'm still Jerome Ford. Stefanski came out and said, we signed Hunt. Jerome Ford still number 1 running back. They could have restructured Hunt's contract, in the offseason. Instead, they cut him. I know it was $4 million, and of course, you take the cheaper running back. Kareem Hunt, I'm under the impression that he's just not that good anymore. If you're a really good football player, you're not going to be a free agent in September. He had chances to sign with different teams. He got worked out for different teams. Whether that was Kareem Hunt saying, I want to wait, or whether it's the team saying, we're not giving you a contract. I don't know what those discussions were, but I feel pretty confident that Jerome Ford will be RB1 for this team. Just these next couple of weeks are some really ugly matchups for him.
Interesting name. Says we're starting Kate Otten this week. Not many options on the waiver. If you're really that desperate, maybe if you go and you see if a Juwan Johnson's available. I mean, Kate Cotton going up against the Eagles, I understand because the Eagles secondary hasn't been that great up until this point in the season. If you're really desperate, it's not. And of course, maybe a guy like Juwan maybe not be available. Okonkwo is not available. Not great matchups. But going up against the Eagles, I don't think it's the worst play.
Eagles have been batting against tight ends for a while now. So, and like he doesn't leave the field.
Touchdowns. Henry was able to get into the end zone. Or not into the end zone, excuse me. Yeah, no, he did score, but
He
5
scored.
for 51. Facts.
I don't love it, but I mean, it sounds like you have no options. So
Correct.
I guess what are we talking about here?
I'm
He's
trying
trying to
think
get
of,
us
like,
to
I'm trying to
join
think
that.
of some players
Like Hayden Hurst, maybe.
That's
Zach
who I was going to
Ertz,
actually
if he's
say. Like, if
available
Hayden
in half
Hurst
of
is out there,
leagues.
maybe if like
Andy
I would
Dalton will
look for
be
Jake
starting.
Ferguson.
Jake Ferguson, definitely someone who's probably available. Andy Dalton will be starting at quarterback. I don't know if we mentioned that with our injuries. Bryce Young will not be playing. I understand why you didn't mention it because not many people are starting a Bryce Young right now. But yeah, maybe Andy Dalton does look to older vet and you start to see Hayden Hurst get some love. ZV3 Games says start Swift or Brees this week.
Swift.
I'm going. Yeah, Swift against the Buccaneers. Buccaneers rush defense still is pretty solid. Tough.
If the Jets like announced right now that Brees was getting 15 touches, let alone 25, I would say Brees. I just
think that Brees has, well, with this Patriots defense, excuse me, we understand that last week the game plan was to stop the over-the-top passes, which allowed there to be open plays for Raheem Mostert to have success, and he did.
saw stack
absolutely
boxes
went
on
crazy.
like 11% of his carries. Like they just did not worry about the run.
So I feel as if it would be a priority for them to limit the run game here. They're gonna let Zach do whatever he wants or try and do whatever he wants. It's hard for me, who understands the talent of Brees Hall right now is number 2 in yards over expected, behind the best running back in the National Football League in CMC. I understand where you're coming from. Swift might be safer right now.
Swift is safer. Yeah, with the weather, with the Jets offense, with his lack of touches, I think you have to go Swift.
But Brees Hall also was complaining about lack thereof touches. Maybe he wasn't outward about it, but he was tweeting 4 football emojis, which equals the amount of carries that he did have.
He said it after the game. He said they asked him like, "Oh, like what do you think of the struggles?" He's like, "Well, I only got 4 touches." He's pissed. He should get the ball more.
The weird thing is like the first game of the season, he wasn't as limited. And I know the score was a little bit, different in those 2 games, but like you're at the point now where it's like you have to run the ball to find any success. And Dalvin Cook looks pretty bad, and Brees has looked. Yeah, like if you told me Brees was getting 14 touches and Swift was getting 22, I still might take Brees just because he's so good.
Yeah, if you could guarantee me 14 touches from Brees, give me that over Swift.
But he could, like, his floor is like scary low.
Yeah, it is. Let's do a handful more here. I got work in the morning.
I understand. Angel Vasquez says, was thinking about trading Jamar after week 1 if he underperforms again with or without Burrow. Should I wait or try to get a better option? Do not trade Jamar Chase, please. Don't do it.
Unless it's like a super flex league and you could flip him for like an elite quarterback or elite running back, even though there's like 2 in the league. But don't try to outthink the room and like tear down from Jamar Chase. Like the trade Adam just made, don't try to tear down from Jamar Chase to Calvin Ridley. Jamar is going to be fine.
What if like in a redraft league, somebody's like really hurting at running back, right? Or wide receiver rather. And you're hurting at running back and you have Chase. Would you try to trade Chase for like, I'm trying to think of a top tier receiver that's been a little like AJ Brown and a running back. Like, would you trade Chase for AJ Brown and
Khalil Herbert?
ETN?
No, maybe a little bit like Jerome Ford or somebody in that like 15 to 20 range. Like
the thing with AJ Brown is, you have Jamar Chase. Are you keeping Jamar? AJ Brown is still unbelievable.
He is. No, he is. But I mean, there's a world that Smitty's the best receiver on that team.
Yeah.
I don't.
That's
this season,
not
like
the
statistically,
craziest statement I've ever heard.
I would be shocked if T. Higgins. Right now he's on pace to, but I'd be shocked if at the end of the year T. Higgins outproduces Jamar Chase. I wouldn't be shocked if it happened with Smitty.
Jamon M says full PPR, Zay Flowers or Jahmyr Gibbs. Who should I start at flex?
Gibbs.
This is a good question, actually.
Gibbs had 9 targets last week. Amon-Ra may not be 100%. Don't expect goal line work because it's still not happening with Montgomery out. But like, again, similar in that Aaron Jones kind of mold. If he gets 10 to 12 carries and 6-7 targets, he's going to smash.
But you also did mention how the Colts have allowed a receiver to go over 100 yards 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, they
Zay
stink.
Flowers has looked like the most explosive wide receiver on this Ravens team. Lamar and him have a quick rapport.
Was that the
early
best throw
on.
of the season so far last week?
Yes.
So
That-
Yeah.
good.
that was
Or Tua to
I
Tyreek.
was gonna say either that or Tua's
That
throw on the
facts.
run.
facts.
That throw was pretty amazing.
I
think
think
I'm
lean.
a lean Zay. I'm leaning Zay
I lean
here.
Zay too. Yep, I lean Zay too.
I'm going.
But it's a good problem to have. Start both of them.
Very
if you
good.
Find a way.
Choose 3: Olave, Devontae, DJ Moore, Pittman.
Olave
Get rid
and
of DJ
Smitty
Moore.
easy.
Get rid of DJ
Yep.
Moore.
Yep.
I would bench DJ Moore too, but again, that Colts game is in Baltimore. It's again, we keep talking about it. I just hope the weather's not terrible. But Michael Pittman is pretty much, he's not AJ Brown, but he's in the AJ Brown role in this Shane Steichen offense where they just run RPOs, and anytime they run an RPO, he's getting the ball if they don't run it because you can't throw it anywhere else or else you get.
That is a good point. I didn't realize Baltimore could be affected by the storm too. If it's raining, start Gibbs over Zay.
Facts. Brandon Diaz, this is going to be the last question on the show, and we appreciate all you guys tuning in. If you stuck around, it's almost 1:30 in the morning right now. You guys are champs. Brandon Diaz says, should I start Olave or Pickens or Collins? Olave is the best here. You don't think about it. Really, you send him out there.
Yep.
Just
All
don't
right.
watch the first half because apparently
Yeah,
they throw to
facts.
Michael Thomas in the first half and then Olave in the second half.
Listen, I'm praying Michael Thomas is back.
So
he
am
looks
I.
pretty damn good. All right, but you know what? Let's wrap it up here. It is almost 1:30. Adam, if I had the clapping sound right now, I would give it to you. Appreciate you. Pause.
Appreciate
Respect
that. Thank you.
Adam, really appreciate it. If there's something you want to shout out real quick before you go, here's your time to do so.
Yeah, it was a blast, guys. Appreciate it. And yeah, if you want to check out any of my work, it's over at ftnfantasy.com where we have a ton of awesome content for season-long fantasy, daily fantasy, betting. We also, this year is the first year we are the home of DVOA, which I'm sure you guys have referenced many times on the podcast. So anything DVOA related is on our site now, which is really, really awesome. And yeah, it's rankings, anything you can think of for fantasy football. But also we have, sites for betting, daily fantasy, and it's an exciting time with content for sure. I do basketball content as well, and I'll be wrapping up pretty soon here. I'm hoping for a first round playoff win for my Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm all over the place with my fandom, I know.
That's okay. You're talking to me, Mr. All Over the Place with this fandom. But listen, Adam, I speak for both of us. You're more than welcome to be on this show anytime you want to be. We really do appreciate your time. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Fantasy Reaction. We'll be back Monday to recap the Buccaneers and Eagles game. But that's going to do it. We hope you guys had a good one. We appreciate you guys sticking around for so long. We'll catch you guys next time.